The African National Congress is embarking on initiatives to raise funds to try and pay its employees. The workers, some of whom haven't received their payment in 2 months, recently downed tools demanding their salaries. Now, they would like for their salaries to be paid. For more on this, we are joined by the party to tell us about how they are working to try and resolve this situation. Joining me in studio is ANC Spokesperson Pule Mabe. Mr. Mabe, thank you very much for making time to come to studio here to talk to us. The issue of the payment, or should I say non-payment, of salaries of Luthuli House workers, it's been going on for some time. Perhaps there may be new information today. Anything as far as an update on when the people can receive payment?
Morning, Toli, and morning to your viewers. Of course, we are doing everything else in our power to make sure that we resolve the current situation. We have went on a massive awareness drive around our crowdfunding initiative, and the reception has been quite great. We are humbled by the outpouring support coming from many people in this country from different provinces who have begun depositing monies, making contributions as little as 500 towards that crowdfunding initiative. It does show that if we could be able to drive some of these campaigns massively, we will be able to resolve problems of the ANC from a financial point of view going into the future. But also, Toli, the introduction of all of these initiatives is driven by one important principle that the Treasurer General of the African National Congress, Comrade Paul, has outlined, that we need to begin moving the ANC from being overly dependent on private funds to run its own affairs. The ANC has got to find other innovative ways, for instance, expand on our own levy pot, make sure that it is not just MPs, councillors, and those that serve in the National Assembly who pay levies. You should also allow ordinary South Africans who are members of the ANC or supporters of the ANC who may want to make a contribution to do so. I mean, simply put, the ANC has got almost 1.5 million members, but the ANC is voted into power by more than 11 million South Africans. It means that there are more than 9 million South Africans who are not necessarily card-carrying members of the ANC, but who agree and subscribe to the ideals of the African National Congress. It is those people that through the crowdfunding initiatives and other innovative platforms that our Treasurer General is considering, we also want to bring on board to help us sustain the work we are expected to do in executing the National Democratic Revolution.
Mr. Mabe, we're going to talk about the broader implications of what is happening with ANC staffers, and when I say broader, extending to government, because the ANC is a party in government.
Yes.
Right now, though, it would appear that you, as the ANC, and the way that you're speaking, it's as if you're waking up today to this ongoing problem, because this has been reported to have started during the era of Mr. Zweli Mkhize, who was Treasurer General until the 2017 conference. And so this matter extends to that period. Why has it been allowed to fester and become what it is today?
Well, Toli, just in fairness to us, I don't think that we are waking up today to only say we're experiencing this. You know, they would have been, even from the time of, Comrade Matthew, when he was Treasurer General, there would have been those kind of challenges. I was the TG of the Youth League at the time. Unfortunately, you never really had massive social media platforms.
Can I quickly jump in?
Yes.
You're saying Mr. Matthew's poster at the time that he was Treasurer General. No. I had the opportunity to speak to him some time ago, and it had to do with this issue of salaries. And he made it clear that there were never such problems during his era.
Well, it's okay. I mean, it's not for me to differ with that position. All I'm saying to you is that even at that time, when some of us were leading the ANC Youth League, we will pick up. And you see, the issue is that where there are salary issues in the African National Congress, those that are impacted upon by that action are then told. It could be that it's a delay with a month or sometimes a day and all of that. Staffers are then briefed, you know. And I can tell you that Treasurer Generals of the ANC, Comrade Mendy, the late Comrade Mendy, Comrade Matthew, Comrade Zweli, and Comrade Paul, work around the clock to make sure that they could be able to meet the growing obligations that the ANC has got to really fulfill and satisfy. And where there are challenges, those that are in the employ of the ANC are then briefed of those challenges. It's just that never have we experienced a situation where we have got suddenly lockdowns in the country occasioned by COVID. We now have got the Party Political Funding Act. So there's numerous other issues that are now disempowering political parties to be able to mobilize resources in the manner that they would have in the past when the playing field was quite leveled. Some of those are matters that relate to acts before Parliament, the conditions that we find. It's not only the ANC that finds itself in this kind of a situation. Other businesses have had to liquidate or going through a business rescue.
Indeed, other businesses, but not political parties per se. Other parties, we have not heard reports that they are unable to pay their staffers. But there are people who are going to opportunistically link what is going on and specifically go to the period that I have mentioned of Zweli Mkhize being the treasurer of the African National Congress, which is purported to be the time that these issues started, to say, well, if indeed they started under Zweli Mkhize's watch, is it a surprise, therefore, that the department which he ran, unfortunately, he no longer is at the helm of that department? Is there a case to be made here that these problems, which are suggested to have started under Dr. Zweli Mkhize, should people make the necessary links to say, this is someone with a potentially, and let's be clear, there are allegations against him, nothing has been proven yet, but it does talk to perhaps someone who may be walking around with a checkered past?
Well, Gori, I wouldn't even want to get into that space, because the reality is that the leadership of the ANC takes collective responsibility to make sure that it does everything else in its power and authority to galvanize resources to be able to run the organization. Treasurer Generals alone, not supported by the entirety of the collective they serve with, may not be able to really perform their duties optimally. So we got to be seen working together as a team, as a collective, because at the end of it all, when we take this organization back to its rightful members, when we go to the next conference of the African National Congress, it is us who will be accounting on the work that we did to make sure that we could be able to fulfill the programs of the African National Congress given to us by the previous National Conference of the ANC.
As I say, some people are going to opportunistically link what is happening to the ANC at party level to perhaps what is happening in government. And they're going to say, well, it actually does mirror what is going on in government, because if the governing party cannot pay its staffers, how much more those who work in government, particularly areas that are run by the ANC, the different ministries, for example, that are in charge of certain SOEs. How many of these SOEs, for example, have not been able to pay their employees? Dinel is one such entity of government. Do you see where this is going?
No, but Koli, I think it's a bit unfair.
Why? Because
we in the ANC, while we are the governing party in South Africa, we do not interfere with the running of SOEs and all of that are otherwise profit-making.
That's what you say. That's what you say. The evidence that has come out in platforms like the State Capture Commission of Inquiry, and I'm sorry, I'm really sorry to cut in, but they have spoken to interference of ANC?
Well, Toli, if there's anyone out there who interferes in the work of the runnings of state institutions doing so in the name of the ANC, I can tell the viewers of Newzroom Afrika that never in our National Executive Committee meeting have we passed a resolution called interference with state. We've never done that. So those that do it are doing it mischievously, not appointed or sanctioned or deployed by the African National Congress to perform such a responsibility. The ANC has got numerous other platforms where it agrees on a program that it will implement through its own deployees in government. It says, oh, okay, we need to drive economic reconstruction and recovery. What should be the pillars of such? And we make sure that we've got a broader consultative forum to be able to then say, oh, okay, with the sort of resources that our own first class is able to provide, and looking at the conditions of our people on the ground, will this program be able to be responsive to their own desires? Yeah. That's what the ANC does. We do not co-opt others to go on our behalf, speak for the ANC, and want to introduce ideas that the African National Congress has never even discussed. We don't do that. We don't interfere with the running of state institutions. We also do not tell them how they must run their own salary bills every month and all of that. We are donor-based. We depend on donations. We also depend on levies that we get from our councillors, those in the legislature, and those in the National Assembly. Now, we are now saying, okay, there's now the Political Party Funding Act. It has introduced numerous other things, issues of disclosures. It has also placed a threshold on how much a company could be able to contribute. For instance, the threshold that it places now is 100,000. So now you have to look at various other ways, which is what the Treasurer General is doing, to begin to say, let's look at means and ways through which we can do this. Part of that is increasing membership, monies that we pay for membership. I mean, the ANC membership, annual membership has been sitting at 12 rand for the longest of time, you know, and yet then the ANC also has got its own engine, the engine of the organization, the Secretary General's office of the ANC. It's a full-time responsibility headquartered at Lituli House. They are also National Executive Committee members in accordance with the resolution of the 54th National Conference who are full-time at Lituli House. But what we've done, Toli, because in the past, pension funds will be paid at Lituli House, salaries at Lituli House and all of that. Part of the measures that the Treasurer General is now undertaking is to parcel out salaries of provinces so that those could then be paid by provinces, and this would entail your provincial and regional staff, which constitute the largest employee cohort of the African National Congress.
By the way, Mr. Mabe, talking about pension funds, the contributions of these workers towards those pension funds and provident funds, have those stopped? Just curious.
Well, it is part of the obligations, mandatory obligations, that the relevant office in the African National Congress, the TGO, is attending to make sure that your provident funds, medical aids, all of these mandatories, make sure that they are all up to date and be able to communicate with...
So they have, in short, they have been compromised in this process.
Well, of course, there was that kind of a situation which we are dealing with. I can tell you now, Toli, I mean, there will be a time when the Treasurer General will be having a round table with most of you in the media. Want to also be able to outline the levels of support that we have received from many South Africans who have made their own contributions, some not even members of the ANC, to show that they want to contribute towards the sustenance of the African National Congress and to make sure that its finances are in good health.
Mr. Mabe, let's pause there for a second. We're going to take a short break. When we return, I'm going to ask you about whether it's fair for you to run to the electoral court as a result of your own problems within the ANC, which led to 35 municipalities that you may possibly not be able to contest should this election, the upcoming local election, go on in October. We continue the conversation in a moment. You watching Newsfeed AM. We are in conversation with African National Congress spokesperson Pule Mabe on various topical issues. Mr. Mabe, let's go to the matter that has dominated headlines this past week, and that is the issue of the ANC missing the deadline in a number of municipalities where your list of members who are supposed to contest the elections were missed. Now, you have run to the Electoral Court to try and say, well, let's try and reverse this process. Is that fair to other parties who at least have been able to meet the IEC deadlines, bar the UDM? It will have its own time to come and talk to us about why they missed their deadline. But let's just focus the attention on the ANC.
Well, Tony, just to correct something, I don't think that it is entirely about us missing the deadline. We had explained what the situation was. The Deputy Secretary General spoke to members of the media last week, wherein she was giving an update on our approach, our intent to approach the Electoral Court, because there were a number of issues that we experienced. I mean, late morning on Monday, there were a number of delays in terms of loading. For instance, you will be loading, the system will be kicking you out. It could be your own internet, or it could be a glitch on the other side. You wouldn't know. But also, you know, Toli, a simple thing like Netflix, if you are a movie fanatic, you will know. If you were to download movies on Netflix in the morning when there's not a lot of people on the net, you might be able to download faster. But if you were downloading late, when there were many other people who are using that, you always experience system delays and all of that. It's always a two-way issue, because we don't want to apportion blame on the part of the Independent Electoral Commission, because we feel and believe that they are capable to conduct elections. Now, the rules of engagement do provide for what the ANC intend to approach the Electoral Court on. So to also clarify the issue of the 32 municipalities, it's actually the audit of the that the ANC will have conducted will then reflect that there would be, in terms of the numbers, that those numbers of your PR councillors and ward councillors, where we may not have, where we might have experienced this kind of a technical issue, because it's really more of a technical issue.
Yeah.
Because all the information that needed to be fed into the system is available. It's not like we're still looking for information, you know, where we did not have, we had incomplete information that we still had to look for.
Yeah.
You know, when we supported the application of the IEC, especially in their own affirmation of the Judge Museneke's observation that, you know, conditions might not be possible for us to have free and fair elections in October. At the center of that was the COVID issue.
Yeah.
So whether we like it or not, Toli, it is for the first time that we are even to go into a massive election under conditions of COVID. There were lockdowns, and under those lockdown regulations, or you know, those different alert levels, there are some where you really can't even open space for political gatherings. When you did open space for political gatherings, you were now nearing the date of having to now register your own candidates. Now, at the time when you had to, the very registration weekend that we're approaching, the last registration weekend that we're approaching, at that time, we're experiencing third wave in our country. So if we are honest, all of us, if we are honest, we must all remember that there's always been an argument being raised about the impact and implications that COVID-19 is going to have on our ability to run a free and fair election. What happened on that weekend of the 23rd is a clear demonstration of how much constrained we are in terms of trying to do everything under a compressed time frame without having to meet other things as well. So you are going to end up having, for instance, in other situations, you have got Toli, who is a university student at the University of Limpopo, registered there to vote. Toli is now back at home. Toli is a popular person, is a community activist. We actually have got that case in Mpumalanga. Toli is then voted for to become a representative of that. But Toli doesn't have time to change his details because now you have closed the voters' roll. As a result, Toli will then fall off, even when the community had said, we want Koli to be our representative there. Because you cannot, in terms of the Electoral Act, you cannot be a candidate of a ward in a place where you don't stay at.
Mr. Mabe, I want to conclude this conversation with you and almost try and combine all these factors that we are talking about, from the non-payment of salaries of employees of the ANC to the missing of deadlines. This is something, by the way, that around the local government issue, that I had a conversation with a fellow comrade of yours who's written a book about the future realities of coalitions in South Africa. Mzwani Lamasina is the person. And he's making it very clear, at least in the lead up to the 2016 local government elections, that among the issues or the faults was the lack of preparedness for the ANC, perhaps to go into coalitions, but specifically so, divisions within the party and the inefficiencies. All I want to ask of you right now is whether or not what South Africans are observing is the implosion that political pundits and observers have been talking about for the longest time. Is this that time? Has it come so soon that this party basically is falling apart?
Well, I don't think so, Koli. The ANC is not falling apart. We are having to do a number of things, perform multiple tasks, sometimes under pressure. But what the ANC does is that every time it faces challenges, it states its case out to the public. And when the ANC is able to withstand all forms of pressures that it may face and assure society that it is still the very ANC that they can trust. I mean, not having monies at a time when the economy is not doing well, proven by Stats SA and all of that. I mean, they just released reports from Stats SA. They are showing that our own economy is not doing well. But you expect the ANC that operate in a condition where the economy is not doing well, the ANC to become this miracle party that performs better when everything else is not working.
Well, part of the fault is the ANC itself because of the policies it has followed.
Even on COVID, you must blame the ANC. I mean, we've got a COVID problem, so the COVID problem is now an ANC problem. I mean, we now have got COVID now. You yourselves, at some point, you were having to talk to us on Zoom. You know, you only started allowing us to come to studio some few weeks ago because you were alive to the fact that we are facing this deadly pandemic.
But Mr. Mabe, that does not impede anyone from thinking creatively. As we speak, we had a record turnout, some people have said or have observed, in Zambia. Zambians coming out in their numbers to vote and voted a party that they deemed useless out of power.
Well, Toli, I wouldn't even want to really... We have got our own situation. We are experiencing variants in our own way, different to Zambia. So let's talk about our own conditions. Every day at night, we are getting stats of the number of people that have been infected by this COVID-19, those that have passed on. I mean, I'm sure, like me, you too might have lost someone in your own family due to COVID. I mean, I've had my grandfather succumb to COVID, and I'm sure that we speak to many others. This past weekend, we have lost the grandson of Utata Walter Sisulu, Moikwa Sisulu, who also succumbed to COVID. There are many others. Last we had to issue a statement last week about the president of the Women's League who had succumbed. So now these are the realities that we are living with.
The question, Mr. Mabe, I don't want us to get carried away because I need to close this now. It's about whether or not the ANC is imploding.
I have clarified that. I have clarified that. Actually, what I was now doing was to emphasize the point I was making, that we must never want to place the ANC in a different position than the rest of society, even when we know what are the challenges that we are all facing on the ground. The ANC is not about to implode. We've got the leadership of the African National Congress that honestly takes stock of the happenings in the organization. This afternoon, we've got our own National Working Committee meeting, which will be able to reflect on the current developments, and I'm sure that coming out of that meeting will be a set of marching orders in terms of what we need to communicate out to the public.
Well, as a party that always puts itself out as a leader of society, I'm sure you will have something to say about the arrest of 7 suspects who allegedly murdered a Gauteng government official, which was said this morning by the police minister to this show that it was actually a hit. But also, importantly, the arrest of instigators of the unrest we saw last month. Does the ANC welcome these developments?
Well, of course, we do welcome these developments. We align ourselves with the views expressed by the President in his capacity as the President of the Republic of South Africa, that civil servants like the acting CFO of the Department of Health were quite exemplary on how they carried themselves, and that those that know of wrongdoings being done in state departments should not be scared to come out, because it is when we act together and report these things to law enforcement agencies and make sure that we expose that do wrongs, that we will be able to project our government differently, we will be able to win back the trust of our people. We welcome the work done by the police, and we hope that the court in the land will also act with the necessary speed to mete out judgment befitting the crime committed by this by those that are alleged to have done so. And as it comes to instigators, we are hoping that the police, again, our law enforcement agencies, will be on top of this one as well. Because South Africa is a democratic country. We have got a lot of platforms through which people can be able to express themselves. None of us have got the duty to use even social media to undermine the peace of others, lead to public property being destroyed, people losing livelihoods. I mean, basically that's what happened. But of course, because these are still allegations, let's allow law enforcement agencies to do their work. When convictions, when successful convictions have been made through these arrests, we will be able to know that we are now tying the screws behind those that are doing wrongs in our society.
Pule Mabe, thank you very much for your time. Spokesperson for the governing African National Congress.